The world is currently caught up in the grip of the World Cup fever, with millions of people rediscovering their passion for the best game in the world, without even realizing how their favorite metal bands are connected to it.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
So today, let's take a look at just some of the rock and metal legends who almost traded the stage for the pitch, or diehard football fans, and even wrote some metal anthems specifically for the stands. Here you go. When we talk about metal musicians who could have been professional football players, we kinda have to start with one whom I am more than sure pretty much every viewer of this channel knows of. The boss himself. Yes, long before Iron Maiden, Steve Harris was a huge West Ham United fan and a standout youth prospect. And even more, he was even scouted by the legendary Wally St. Pierre, the man who found Bobby Moore and Jeff Hurst, and was invited to train with West Ham United. But as we all know, once rock music took hold of him, his path changed. But not really. As to this very day, Steve Harris never left football behind him, being rather vocal about being a huge West Ham United fan and still captain his own Iron Maiden football club, with which he casually plays a full football game while being on tour with one of the biggest and the most demanding heavy metal bands on the planet, even today, being 70 years old.
Well, just love playing football, and we played 4 matches already in Europe. We played 10 on the last tour last year.
Yet, of course, it's expected he isn't the only British musician, and even not the only British bassist, who almost chose the grassy pitch. Def Leppard's Rick Savage was a massive football prospect in his youth and was even signed to Sheffield United, which is actually pretty wild, given the whole fact that since he was a little kid, he was actually a huge fan of their cross-town rivals, Sheffield Wednesday. Yet that did not stop him from spending a couple of years with United before the music of Atomic Mass and eventually Def Leppard became his true calling. And of course, it's not just the classic rock and metal icons. Some of the most extreme names in metal were also almost professional athletes. Like, for example, Jan Axel Blomberg, better known as Hellhammer, who, before he started redefining what black metal drumming is with Mayhem, was a high-level athlete. And in his youth in Norway, he wasn't just into football. He was an avid player in local leagues, balancing his time between the pitch and other sports like wrestling, which I guess gave him that crazy endurance to do that for hours straight. And then we have one of the most technical and one of the most spoken of guitarists on the planet today. As before Teemu Mintesare was handpicked by Dave Mustaine to join Megadeth, and before his tenure at Wintersun, he was a typical Finnish kid, which of course means spending quite a lot of time playing hockey and football. And he actually did play for his local team and was deeply involved in sports way before the guitar became his primary obsession. Although I personally have a feeling that hockey actually still means a bit more to him personally. And finally, of course, when talking about football, we simply have to mention Brazil. The late, great Andre Matos was a legend of melodic power metal, but he was also a fixture in the famous Rock Goal tournament on MTV Brazil. And what makes Matos' story incredible is that he played as a goalkeeper, despite having severe myopia, which means he literally barely could see the ball in distance. And by the way, because of his Japanese-Brazilian heritage, and because of the rather unusual way he would go in for the saves, the commentators gave him the nickname Musa Nisei Sansei for doing rather interesting dances while saving the goal.
Realmente ela vem regredindo, mas ainda não é
And that list of course can go on and on and on, stretching this episode for hours, so I'm deliberately trying to keep it short and simple, limiting it to just about 5 people in each category. And so, talking about the other categories? Well, of course, not every metal musician played at a high level. Still, the fan culture in metal is actually pretty insane and pretty loud. And once again, talking about Def Leppard, Joe Elliott is of course a diehard Sheffield United fan. And the funny thing is that growing up in a divided city, Joe chose the red side specifically because everyone else at his school was rooting for Sheffield Wednesday. So basically did the absolute opposite of Rick Savage. And to this very day, he of course keeps up with United, although according to him, he hasn't actually been at a stadium for quite a while now.
Man for man, I thought that a lot of teams in League One we're better than the
You need
the
a club
average
next
team.
season.
But while Joe supports his favorite team watching TV at home, somebody else I'm pretty sure you all know does not only that. As yes, of course, talking about Iron Maiden themselves, by far not only Steve Harris is a huge football fan. And while Steve is all about the Hammers, Yannick Gers, for example, is a season ticket holder for Hartlepool United, his hometown team. And he's actually been frequently spotted at Victoria Park, supporting his team through thick and thin. Well, if we're being very honest, mostly the latter lately. And then, of course, there is the mighty geezer Butler. And for the Black Sabbath bassist, Aston Villa isn't just a team, it's his second religion. Growing up near Villa Park, the roar of the stadium shaped his childhood. And so I think it's very symbolic that last summer, Geezer and Ozzy Osbourne teamed up to help launch Aston Villa's new kit. And it was there, at their stadium, where the legendary band held their final ever concert. And if we're talking about the other side of metal, in Portugal, Moonspell's Fernando Ribeiro is a fierce FC Porto supporter, despite actually being raised in Lisbon. Yet he did inherit the passion from his father and isn't afraid to be a Portista in the capital. And for that loyalty, he even had a chance to perform at FC Porto Annual Awards, alongside his band member Ricardo Amorim, who actually happens to be a Sporting fan. And then there's another guy whom I wanted to point out in this particular segment. And it's actually the guy you're looking at right now. Because yes, just like metal, football has been a huge part of my life since I was a little kid. Spending every week at a stadium together with my late father, supporting just one club.
Ну ведь это все-таки Барселона.
А мы Динамокеев, что такое?
And thus here I guess would be a good time to quickly point out that only around 30% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to this channel. So if you're not one of those, and especially if this is not the first video you're watching here, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing right now. Let's continue building this amazing heavy metal community together.
We're gonna have a good time. Always.
But anyways, going back to the next group of fans, and well, for some rock and metal musicians, their passion for football actually goes from the pitch and straight into the studio. And some people from Sweden actually took it to an absolutely different level. As back in 1998, members of prominent Stockholm metal bands formed an all-star side project Bayern Death Cult, dedicated entirely to the Hammarby football team fan songs. Which, if you think about it, is actually pretty logical, given Hammarby historically was always a working-class club, and well, hard rock and heavy metal was basically a blue-collar music when it started. And by the way, this wasn't just some small project. Led by Grand Matos and heavy load bassist Mats Haddon, it featured musicians from the bands like Unleashed, Grave, Necrophobic, Therion, and even had a chance to drop 2 releases entirely dedicated to Hammarby fan culture. And then in Poland, crossover legends Quo Vadis actually took it even a step further than that, with them first making a compilation Pogon back in the mid-1990s dedicated entirely to the fan songs of their hometown football team, which was later on re-released back in 2020 with a couple of additional songs, and with one of them even becoming an unofficial Pogon fan anthem. And even more, one of their metal songs could even sound at a World Cup, as back in April of 2006, the band took part in the Hitna Mundial contest with their new song Gloria Polska, which, if it would have won, would actually become an official song for the Polish national team. But anyways, the bottom line of this video, which I do understand is rather strange and rather different from the rest of the videos I usually do on this show, is to point out how much metal is actually connected to football, which, in case you didn't notice, I refuse to call anything else. So please do let us know in the comments whether you are a football fan and which is your team that you support, as well as any other musicians that I didn't include in this list. Cause yeah, there are a bunch of those. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching this very short and spontaneous video, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!